Section 34 of A Visit to the Holy Land. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 17 of A Visit to the Holy Land, Egypt and Italy, Part 2, by Ida L. Pfeiffer. October 1st. The quarantine doctor examined us in a very superficial manner, and pronounced that we should be free tomorrow. Upon this a boisterous hilarity prevailed. The prisoners rejoiced at the prospect of speedy release, and shouted, sang, and danced in the courtyard. The keepers caught the infection, and all was mirth and good humor until late in the night. October 2nd. At 7 o'clock this morning we were released from thraldom. A scene similar to that at Alexandria then took place. Every one rushed to seize upon the strangers. It is here necessary that the traveller should be as much upon his guard as in Egypt among the Arabs, in the matters of boat fares, porterage, etc. If a bargain is not struck beforehand, the people are most exorbitant in their demands. A few days before our release, I had made an arrangement with an innkeeper for board, lodging, and transport. Today he came to fetch me and my luggage, and we crossed the arm of the sea which divides Fort Manuel from the town of La Valette. A flight of steps leads from the shore into the town, past the 3 rows of fortifications rising in tiers above each other. In each of these divisions we find streets and houses. The town, properly speaking, lies quite at the top. It is therefore necessary to mount and descend frequently, though not nearly so often as at Constantinople. The streets are broad and well paved, the houses spacious and finely built. The place of roofs is supplied by terraces, frequently parcelled out into little flower beds, which present a very agreeable appearance. My host gave me a tiny room, and meals on the same principle, coffee with milk morning and evening, and 3 dishes at dinner time, but for all this I did not pay more than 45 kreutzers, or about 1 shilling and 6pence. The first thing I did after taking up my quarters here was to hasten to a church to return thanks to the Almighty for the protection He had so manifestly extended to me upon my long and dangerous journey. The first church which I entered at La Valette was dedicated to St. Augustine. I was particularly pleased with it, for since my departure from Vienna I had not seen one so neatly or well built. Afterwards I visited the church of St. John, and was much struck with its splendor. This building is very spacious, and the floor is completely covered with monumental slabs of marble, covering the graves of the knights. The ceiling is ornamented with beautiful frescoes, and the walls are sculptured from ceiling to floor with arabesques, leaves, and flowers in sandstone. All these ornaments are richly gilt, and present a peculiarly imposing appearance. The side chapels contain numerous monuments, mostly of white marble, and one single one of black, in memory of a celebrated Maltese knights. At the right-hand corner of the church is the so-called rose-colored chapel. It is hung round with a heavy silk stuff of a red color, which diffuses a roseate halo over all the objects around. The altar is surrounded by a high, massive railing. 2 only of the paintings are well executed, namely that over the high altar and a piece representing Christ on the cross. The pillars round the altar are of marble, and at each side of the grand altar rose lofty canopies of red velvet fringed with gold, reaching almost to the vaulted cupola. The uncomfortable custom of carrying chairs to and fro during church time, which is so universal throughout Italy, begins already at Malta. The predilection for the clerical profession seems to prevail here, as it does throughout Italy. I could almost say that every 15th person we meet either is a clergyman or intends to become one. Children of 10 or 12 years already run about in the black gown and 3-cornered hat. The streets are handsome and cleanly kept, particularly the one which intersects the town. Some of them are even watered. The counters of the dealers' shops contain the most exquisite wares. In fact, everywhere we find indications that we are once more on European ground. When we see the Facchini here, with their dark worked caps or round straw hats, their short jackets and comfortable trousers, with jaunty red sashes round their waists, and their bold, free glance, when we contrast them with the wretched fellahs of Egypt, and consider that these men both belong to the same class in society, and that the fellahs even inhabit the more fruitful country, we begin to have our doubts of Mehemet Ali's benignant rule. The governor's palace, a great square building, stands on a magnificent open space. Next to it is the library, and opposite the chief guard-house rears its splendid front, graced with pillars. The coffee houses here are very large. They are kept comfortably and clean, particularly that on the great square, which is brilliantly illuminated every evening. Women and girls appear dressed in black. They are usually accustomed to throw a wide cloak over their other garments, and wear a mantilla which conceals arms, chest, and head. The face is left uncovered, and I saw some very lovely ones smiling forth from the black drapery. Rich people wear these upper garments of silk. The cloaks of the poorer classes are made of merino or cheap woolen stuffs. It was Sunday when I entered La Valette for the first time. Every street and church was thronged with people, all of whom were neatly and decently dressed. I saw but few beggars, and those whom I met were less ragged than the generality of their class. The military, the finest I had ever seen, consisted entirely of tall, handsome men, mostly Scotchmen. Their uniforms were very tasteful. One regiment wore scarlet jackets and white linen trousers, another black jackets and shoulder knots. In fact, the whole uniform is black, with the exception of the trousers, which are of white linen. It seemed much more the fashion to drive than to ride here. The coaches are of a very peculiar kind, which I hardly think can be found elsewhere. They consist of a venerable old, rattling, double-seated box, swinging upon two immense wheels, and drawn by a single horse in shafts. The coachman generally runs beside his vehicle. October 3rd. To-day I drove in a carriage, for the first time since my departure from Vienna, a period of 6 months and a half, to Civita Vecchia, to view this ancient town of Malta, and particularly the celebrated church of St. Peter and St. Paul. On this occasion I traversed the whole length of the island, and had an opportunity of viewing the interior. Malta consists of a number of little elevations, and is intersected in all directions by excellent roads. I also continually passed handsome villages, some of them so large that they looked like thriving little towns. The heights are frequently crowned by churches of considerable extent and beauty. Although the whole island consists of rock and sandstone, vegetation is sufficiently luxurious. Fig, lemon, and orange trees grow everywhere, and plantations of the cotton shrub are as common as potato fields in my own country. The stems of these shrubs are not higher than potato plants, and are here cultivated in exactly the same way. I was told that they had been stunted this year by the excessive drought, but that in general they grew a foot higher. The peasants were everywhere neatly dressed, and live in commodious, well-built houses, universally constructed of stone, and furnished with terraces in lieu of roofs. Civita Vecchia is a town of splendid houses and very elegant country seats. Many inhabitants of La Valette spend the summer here in the highest portion of the island. The church of St. Peter and St. Paul is a spacious building, with a simple interior. The floor is covered merely with stone slabs, the walls are whitewashed to the ceiling, but the upper portion is richly ornamented with arabesques. A beautiful picture hanging behind the high altar represents a storm at sea. The view from the hall of the convent is magnificent. We can overlook almost the entire island, and beyond our gaze loses itself in the boundless expanse of the ocean. Near the church stands a chapel, beneath which is St. Paul's grotto, divided into two parts. In the first of these divisions we find a splendid statue of St. Paul in white marble. The second was the dungeon of the Apostle. Not far from this chapel, at the extremity of the town, there are the catacombs, which resemble those at Rome, Naples, and other towns. During our drive back we made a little detour to see the gorgeous summer palace and garden of the governor. The whole excursion occupied about 7 hours. During my residence in Malta the heat varied from 20 degrees to 25 degrees Reaumur in the sun. End of section 34.